Hi, everyone. This is Mary Kurek with Frontrunners Innovate, and I have with me just a wonderful gentleman with a huge heart for the types of work that he does. And this is an unusual conversation that we're going to have, so I'm going to prepare you for this. We have lots of advocates out there, but it's rare that we get an actual activist who is actively involved in some of the passion work that he does. So I'm going to introduce to you today Joshua Konkankoh. I hope I said that correctly. Native Cameroonian, lives in Portugal right now and is a partner in the Tamara Peace Research Center. But I'm going to go further back than that because I loved what I read about the Bafut Ecovillage vision that you had, the founder of it, and it went for so long with around the concept, I guess, of permaculture. And we'll get you to explain all that. But what I want to take us back to is in Cameroon as a little boy. Growing up from there, where did this activist heart start? Where did that come from? Was it family-based? Is it something you witnessed an event? What was it? Share it with us.
It starts in a spiritual forest. And that is where I was initiated at the age of 13 into the Council of Elders. Because in our village, Bafut, it is believed that if the young people are not invited in the building of the village, in the decision making, usually they will burn it down just to feel the warmth, because there is a separation when there is this generation gap in looking into the future. So this culture so inspired me because I started to realize my world around me was what the elders were telling us in the spiritual forest, that God is the physical side of nature, not the one we hear in church. So I was growing up at this time of colonization where Christianity was being forced onto us. I was given a new name, Joshua, whereas the elders insisted that my name is Konkankoh and it has a meaning. So growing up and listening to the elders and connecting to the ancestors and seeing that the truth, it was the truth, that was the true education. Because we were taught to put our ears to the ground and listen to Mother Earth and to tell what Mother Earth is saying. This is our initiation of becoming visionaries, becoming entrepreneurs of the village, and becoming the wise. We talk a lot about wisdom of the elders. So to be initiated into eldership meant that we started to learn how we achieve leadership through wisdom. And these were special tools of education, having to spend time to get out of the forest. What is in our world? It's like connecting your inner world with the outer world. And this started for me very young. For example, being able to hear, you have to be silent when you are listening. When you are listening, you are able to hear the song of the birds. Even if you can't interpret it, the elders would help you interpret what the songbird is all about. Or the flowing of the river, or the wind through the trees. What are the messages? Are the ancestors speaking to us through the wind? So everything about life for me was this world where you get your food, where materials for building, and the education about love, about respect for the women. So many things that academia doesn't offer. So being a Christian at the same time, my mother was elder in church. and telling me that was the wrong way to go. But I trusted the elders because I could see the example from my father, who was of the royalty and used his wisdom during there was a war fought with the Germans in the Bafut during colonization. And my father was one of those who were designated to learn the white man's secret. And my father started to manufacture guns. After they recovered a gun from the Germans, they went into the forge. And within a year's time, they produced the local Bafut gun. That's how wisdom. So the elders had said that my initiation was not a mistake. Although I was taken out of the church, they instructed me to pay attention to the white man's education, because there are things that we can draw up from there and improve our communities. This was a very strong message. And I lived to grow into that mission. That is why when I went to university, I discovered that there were no forests in the capital. I discovered that they didn't live the clean life of perfection that we had in the rivers, clean rivers to swim, wild fruits, playing with the animals. This was completely not the kind of world that I thought was civilization. So I started to question. And I noticed that it was the same questioning for young people who had come from other villages to the city. So I was inspired to start a garden, which I had started in the village, because the story of permaculture for me started in the spiritual forest. So what we could do was to bring culture to unite the young people, because when they leave the villages, they are completely cut off from their culture, their natural heritage. And then their new society is about the hoodlums who pull them into the underworld to survive. That is about crime for the boys and prostitution for the girls. It was unheard of in my village that a woman doesn't go through the proper way to become a responsible educator in the community and raising children. So to find this for me, I was really now beginning to question what this civilization was all about. So this was the transition from also colonization to the time the so-called independence. I lived through all that. But understanding the culture is very, very important, because I could interpret where we were going to. I created this concept that since the government was listening more to the multinationals and the powers that be with whom they have signed accords to continue the colonization in the economic domain, force our mothers to leave their food sovereignty and start cultivating something they call cash crops. It means they produce cocoa, coffee, something they don't consume for another. And this was the beginning of trouble. So I saw that to revive something in my village, I had to create something that we called A Better World for Cameroon is Possible. That is the name of the NGO. And through my work, I worked in government for 22 years as a communication officer for the Social Security. I was using the concept of social security from our village. And I discovered that the concept of social security preached by the government was favoring the rich instead of the vulnerable, instead of the poor. So I decided that that world was not for me. I jumped off the cliff and focused my attention on what I called Barefoot Eco-Village Vision 2020. So 20 years ago, before 2020, I already started an eco-village demonstration site in my village to reconnect the youth to the land, to stem the migration from the village to the cities, because the farms were ailing, the elders were ailing, all the village structures were ailing, and there was nobody to take care. So I walked in the footsteps of my father to become the entrepreneur of the village and use the same concepts in which I was brought up, like the love economy. I mean, love for me in the Western sense, it's a kind of word. What I understood of love in the village, maybe some people call it today African solidarity. There's more to it. For example, just to build a house, everybody in the village came out and the house was standing the next day. They knew what to get from the forest because tradition, the spiritual forest is about conservation. This is a concept of conservation that is not found in Western civilization. So I cherished this. We started to revive some of those things that were lost in other villages. That is why today the Barefoot Palace is a tourist destination. We have the oldest grass house in West Africa.
Oh, wow.
Made of grass. And it has survived going to 600 years.
Wow.
So what is it about sustainability that we can learn from it? And because these cultural artifacts are still in the palace, so many troops, it's actually earmarked for UNESCO World Heritage Center. Well, we will not go into the politics because in Cameroon, there's an English-speaking community, part of the country, and a French-speaking part of the country.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was the genesis of the war.
Okay.
Not because young people did not identify with the country, but because they were being forced to adopt the French system. So their education system, they had to start sending teachers of French. Their legal system, they have to leave the common law and migrate to something that is alien to them. So all these things caused the students to go on the street to demand that they want to keep their education system, simply. And the government declared war. That's how it all started. And so called them terrorists.
Happened? Is this where the activism in you started to come out?
Then the activism in me started to come out.
Okay.
It's the reason I'm being tracked down, because I use the master's tool to bring down the master's house. How do I do this? Because I understand the corruption in the system. The dictatorship is not about Africans. It is imposed by actually multinationals around the countries in Africa. So I don't go to fight them. In order to make change, you have to create something which is useful for the people, and the people will naturally abandon what is not good for them. This is how we went back to organic farming. We could still revive our own seeds, because there was a law, you cannot use your own seed. You have to go to the city and buy seeds, genetically modified seeds, which go with fertilizers and chemicals, which of course the village people cannot afford. So there are ways that young people can look after themselves, because food for us was not only about, I said it was the economy. You could, if you wanted to marry a woman, you would have to give so many bunches of plantain. Plantain is some kind of banana, and palm wine. And this is food, and it's the economy. This is how our economy worked. And not only that, food as medicine.
Mm-hmm.
If you were sick, we went behind the house and harvested the herbs.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they grow, where we throw the rubbish from the kitchen.
Yeah.
The vegetables come from there. So the concept of the indigenous permaculture, that is why we call our permaculture the African way.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Western sense, permaculture is science.
Yeah.
But that was my role. My role from the village elders was to connect something from the white man to the indigenous knowledge that we had. So the eco-village was actually combining technology, science with indigenous knowledge. And the young people became useful. Those who had gone to school and were learning geography, or history, or French Revolution, what have you, started to adapt knowledge to practical things instead of dreaming to go to Europe. Because up to today, everybody is dying on the high seas going to Europe. Mm. So one strange thing happened. Some Western students from the School of Oriental and African Studies in London came to do a case study of this project. This was the beginning of bringing Bafut to the world and the world to Bafut. Mm-hmm. It's the way that I know that we can achieve peace, because they told their stories, they helped each other, they cried together, they learned to sing together, and then they started to tell a different story. This is how the Together for a Better World International Summer Camp that we organized in Cameroon started to happen. Then we had sending organizations from Japan, NICE Japan, Solidarité Jeunesse in France. We had from Germany, we had from England, we had all over the world, people coming to do this kind of magic where people go to Africa and come back transformed. And it was no magic. It is this magic of reconnecting with Mother Earth and understanding the language of nature. We call it living with nature. And this, they were supposed to co-create it, the solutions of their problems. How do they look at it? So this is how the connection with the global eco-village movement came along. So I was invited to a symposium in Egypt to form where Global Eco-Village Network Europe, Gen Europe, was working to help Africa create a network in Africa. Mm-hmm. And then some of us got involved with the UN Decade of Education and went to Germany to do eco-village design and identify the gaps in education. So today I still say that food has a lot to do with education. Young people in the West think that they harvest chocolates from the supermarket.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know that it's a tree or that it is the cause of children's blood that has caused them to be eating. Or maybe they are eating blood. Do they know that? And does it have an effect in them? So this is an alternative education system.
Mm-hmm.
I started talking about ecovillages at the time when the world did not know. In Europe today, a lot of people are talking about intentional communities. They want to create a community. But there is something about community. Ecovillages are really places par excellence where people can still experience true cultural experience that is connected with their roots. And this kind of expression, beside the traditional indigenous villages, have survived the capitalist Holocaust for those who are in the movement. That is why eco-villages have become popular. Yeah, and then how does this play into climate change?
Yeah, well, let's go through climate change, but let's get you to where you're at now, because I know this is interesting that you said that you ended up in Germany. I'm wondering if that's when you met the partner that you have now. So yeah, tell us about how that ties in. Of course, we have the assumption that it does, but how does that tie into the work that you're doing in climate, and then bring in the Peace Center bit.
Curiously, people who talk about eco-villages or permaculture are like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
And these are platforms for activists to share best practices.
Yeah.
So I didn't actually make the connection with the German community here in Portugal, in Germany. I happened to be in Finland doing a course on the transition towns movement and met a young man who said, "What do you think about free love, free sex as an African?" I said, "Where is this madness coming from?" And he said, "I come from a community where we practice free love, free sex, but it's a very grounded community. We also do water landscapes." So I was curious.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing, I went there to do the water retention landscapes. But curious just to also experience what, because I never heard of a community which is based on these principles.
Mm.
And then I discovered that, well, they have their own moral ethics, values, which are different from mine. But there was something that was very captivating. The fact that they used water landscapes to regenerate arid land in southern Portugal. The same problem I was facing in my community. So this is where the bond of me bringing some indigenous knowledge, we developed a model, a prototype of a mud stove that we use in Cameroon to improve the kitchens of the women, which send smoke outside and use less wood because the forests are. And they were interested in this. And we started to say, how then can this bridge between the South and the North really work? They have a technology test field. So we started to test these prototypes, like how do you have a mud stove that in the absence of firewood can use biogas? And in the absence of biogas can use solar. Mm-hmm. So this is how the concept of the Peace Village came about. Because I strongly believe that where there is no progress or what we call development, there can be no peace. No. In Cameroon, a third of the young population and today living in forest. another is living in prisons, and another in refugee camps. This is such a situation that when I look into the SDGs, I start to ask questions about the goal number 17, which really talks about partnerships. Because within the UN circles, I happen to be in a UN catalyst group for the SDGs.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that when people are talking about a global culture or creating a new system, they are actually talking about defending their system. And this is a very strange realization for me. Because look at a huge continent like Africa, from where civilization started. People don't even know today, young people in the West, that is the cradle of civilization. This continent is left on the sidelines, be it on the side of technology, and then we are talking about a global culture. How can a young person in a rural area who has never seen a smartphone
Mm-hmm.
be part of this culture? So I think the narrative of systems change is short of our era, the times, the 21st century, a digital world. A digital world is not possible without connectivity
Mm-hmm.
and without interbeing, interconnectedness.
True.
So my presence in Europe, and I'm honored to be on Frontline Innovate media platform,
Yeah.
because I think this is the way the world should be going. Social innovation includes all these things, because my practice of permaculture and ecovillages is a holistic way of dealing with so-called the crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Life is these systems and cycles
Mm-hmm.
that flow in a natural way, no matter how many scientific, artificial,
Yeah.
even make us artificial human beings. We will not be a being as part of the beings. We are creating separation.
Yeah.
And this is my worry about civilization. For example, democracy for Africa means divide and rule, exploitation, war.
Mm-hmm.
So are these the systems that we are changing, or the systems that created us? Because there are systems that made us, and there are systems which we make. In this narrative, which systems are we referring to? What are we changing?
So that begs a question. As you have done a lot of work, you know, up to this point, it's like you were saying before, 45 years of all this experience and trying to make a difference, and you are making a difference. And what do you know, it's hard to answer that question when we don't know what's ahead, but you have this worry for civilization, and you're not the only one. I have actually, while you were sharing that, I had another conversation not long ago with somebody who thinks along the same lines as you, but from a whole different place in the world than where you are. He's not in Africa. And I think about what can be done in the next year. It's like we were talking before we came on live. So what can be done in the next year from your perspective? You're not in home anymore. You're not in Cameroon. You're not in Africa. You're in Portugal. So where do you go with what you want to do? What do you want to do with your partnership for Peace Center, you know, the Tamara Peace Center, and with what you hope to do that will make a difference in the next year?
Well, I think time has a way of putting people where they have to be.
Mm-hmm.
Being in Europe during COVID,
Yeah.
for the first time in my life, I was really boxed up for months and months.
Yes.
And I learned to face myself. And I actually went inside me to find the peace that I'm looking for in the world.
Back to the forest.
I discovered that
Yeah.
COVID is an opportunity for the world. I don't think it has happened only to me. It's a kind of call to action.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a wake-up bell that we humans did need to transcend into another level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So interestingly, during this time, I also learned to work online. This meeting would not have been possible. So this is the new normal.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on how we leverage and articulate, we could be heading towards the road for peace. But curiously, the powers that created this power, it's like the atomic bomb. It can be used for civil purposes and it could be used for war. This is what I would be curious to see how Frontrunners media deal with this. Because information is power, and it can also be a very dangerous weapon. We are now, through my own integration of the transitioning, a systems change practitioner, I'm now able to share experiences and learn with other Westerners.
Yeah.
This is my present passion and motivation to be able to make the right relations, because this is an opportunity to, this filters the people who look at things in a certain way. They can group themselves on a certain platform. It could be a WhatsApp group, it could be, so there are so many possibilities of going in the positive direction.
Yeah.
And this is my motivation to start the Peace Village. Because as I said, these are places where people come together and learn from each other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there can be any peace from separation. So this Peace Village is a concept of connecting the so-called global South with the global North in a different way, where on this bridge, there is two-way traffic, not one way as I said. Yeah. That is maybe for me the new normal, if the SDGs are anything to go by, because we all need each other to deal with climate change. We need each other to deal with our own healing.
Mm-hmm. This is true. So as you think forward with, you're such a thought leader that
I don't know.
Yeah, you're like a think tank thought leader guy for sure. As you think about just in the next few months of growing either yourself personally or what the Peace Village idea that you have is, what types of people would most be of interest to you that might help you expand what you're doing? And it would be a type of person, maybe, and maybe a geographic area that you're thinking that you should hear from.
I'll call it the you think I'm a thinker. My think tank is the youth. The greatest thing I did was to draw 6 people from my think tank in Cameroon out of the inferno into Portugal.
Yeah.
This is the think tank that I have. And this is the think tank that is connecting with the technology, with the science. They are smarter than me. In fact, they helped me set up how to do a Zoom call.
Yes.
This is where I am going. I am now transitioning as a social entrepreneur, not into retirement, but I have set up this Ndani for the spirit, which created the eco-villages in the French and the English side of Cameroon. And have been intervening in African villages in many ways through the Global Eco-Village Network, and even influencing policy through doing advocacy with the Global Eco-Village Network at the international level, working with the special mission of African ministers, like how can they integrate eco-villages into, I think for me, it's a path to peace. And there are so many people in this domain that I'm interested in. I have come to realize that setting up as a consultant would definitely need digital engineers. There are people
those young people around you. Yeah,
there are people that are also social entrepreneurs like me in Europe, and who maybe care about how the sustainability of social enterprise can continue despite the heavy hand of top-down. I am very interested in meeting investors because social business cannot work without, we need the private sector. We need business, entrepreneurship. People are interested in youth entrepreneurship. But at the global level, we also, people who are into conservation, people who are climate change activists. So I definitely want to work with platforms that leverage activism in the right way, in the positive way. So the people who hear me and who identify there is this kind of heart-to-heart connections that need to happen for peaceful technology. I am not looking for the technology without a soul, not the money market. I'm looking for people who are actually interested in preserving life, who care about about Mother Earth.
We have plenty of those. You hit the right place. Frontrunners League, which is the companion network to Frontrunners Innovate, is filled with the world's problem solvers and all with huge hearts for what they're doing. And, you know, I can extend a few introductions to you from some of the people you just talked about wanting to meet. And we will definitely do that. And one of them, maybe somebody, one or two of them, maybe people you already know. One of them is from Cameroon, actually, already. So
wow.
I know. And so I think, and it may be the reason why we're connected. You know how LinkedIn is. They just put us together because of that.
Yeah, life is full of mystery.
It is, but you know, I take it that way. I've learned to trust those that come in front of me. So I think what you're doing with the eco villages is phenomenal. I love the way that you're going back to the root of the indigenous processes and how we do things that sometimes is not, it may not be the easier way, but it certainly is this more soul-filled and satisfying way to do things. And it's more sustainable. You know, when we've exhausted all the earth can cough up to us in the way of resources, you know, you can dig out all the uranium you want, you can dig out all the, you know, diamonds, all of that. when we've done that, then if we haven't replaced or replenished or done anything like that, all we're doing is stealing. So we have to be able to understand and appreciate the planet that we're on, and in ways that understands that we've kind of come from it. We'll go back to it as dust. So at some point we have to realize we're all one, including Mother Earth. So thank you for sharing your lovely story with us. I say lovely because it hits the heart, and I say lovely because it started with this beautiful story of I could see you in this spiritual forest, and it almost brought you full circle into COVID, into being back at that same place in your heart, and knowing that the little boy in you saw what was going on in his area and took the best of what he learned from there and brought it forward, and then changed the rest, and learned how to utilize that voice to change others and bring more youth. Big fan of using youth and youth development as a tool for sustainability, because we will not sustain anything without young people. It just isn't happening. We don't have a whole lifespan that's going to go on for hundreds and thousands of years. If we don't get into the youth now so that they can carry it forward, that's it. So hopefully with people who are watching this, they'll see themselves in your story and be able to connect with you and your thoughts, and be able to create that partnership, that relationship with you, because it always starts with relationship, and then moving those thoughts forward and into deeds. And as you build your consultancy, being able to get that platform to speak, and be able to get that platform to be able to acknowledge with your experience and your expertise what people are doing right and wrong, and in the areas that they're doing it. And I think that will be an invaluable resource to the right people. So if you're watching this, everyone on YouTube, go to frontrunnersinnovate.com, where you will find a little bit more information about Joshua and some connections, his social, you have a website, Joshua?
www.betterworld-cameroon.com.
There you go. So we'll have that for you there too. And be sure to catch him on LinkedIn. We'll have his LinkedIn link there for you as well. Thank you again, Joshua. We appreciate it. We'll be following you along, and you and I will talk for a second after we get off the interview. Thanks,
The pleasure
everyone.
is mine.
Thanks.
Thank you for bringing me on.
Bye-bye.